I literally arrived in Turin about an hour ago, so I literally just came straight here from the hotel. So it's it's good to be here. It's a very beautiful looking city.
So I think that the best approach is to go directly on the team. Yeah, and I wanna ask you for who's gonna hear this interview. When you think about filming a mockumentary, because this is a movie and a documentary, mockumentary about famous band, because it's not just Blur, it's been also Gallagher, Rihanna, Bastille. It's easier or harder when the band is more famous?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, I've always looked at fame as kind of a human construct. It's like if you get bedazzled, as we'd say in the UK, if you get lost in what fame is, then you're not going to be able to treat people like a human. You know, you're just going to treat them like a piece of meat or a commodity. You know, if you think about an artist or a human being, they're not born famous. Well, unless they're in the royal family or the child of someone that's already got fame. But usually it's their work that defines them and then creates what people then deem to be celebrity or fame. I'm not really interested in that. I'm more interested in like who the person is and what the work is. And obviously I think when you're younger and you meet people that are recognizable, you can be sort of overwhelmed by, you know, the perception of who they are. But you only have to spend 5 minutes talking to most people to realize we're all the same, you know. Rihanna is just a really fun, entertaining, smart, you know, amazingly talented person, you know, and she happens to be like a global pop superstar. But after a few, you know, days of going on the road with her, you just realise she's like anyone else. She just likes to have a good time and works really hard. So, yeah.
This is the fourth documentary about Blur. But
yes,
I think that for you is more special because, first of all, you are a fan of them.
Yes.
And it's, if I remember good, it's not even the first time you work about them.
Yep.
But this time you were with them,
yes,
laughing with them,
yes,
drinking, eating with them, passing all days with them. So I think that working with someone you admire is the dream of a fan. But for your job, you need to divide. Yep. How did you do that?
Well, I think what you do is you allow your enthusiasm and your knowledge to be helpful, because when they're talking about who they are and what they're doing and their history, you have that knowledge and that confidence in talking to them about who they are, because you know you've done it's not even research, it's your passion and your love for their work, so you're very familiar. So I think that's an advantage, actually. And then to your point, you have to also then be objective, you know, because if you're not careful, you could just allow yourself just to be an annoying fan that doesn't then push them hard. But I don't know, I mean, I think I've had the luxury of like interviewing a lot of people over a long period of time since the age of 14 when I started doing music journalism, similar to you. So I've got like, you know, over 25 years of knowing how to talk to different types of people, and also knowing when it's time to sort of let people, you know, have space, when to push them. You know, it's like any relationship in life, it's about knowing what the timing is for the conversation, isn't it? You can't always push because you might get pushed back, so you've got to be delicate and respectful.
You talk about time, and reading about the documentary is about music, is about the Blur, what they like to do, but it's also about Wembley. Wembley is a central point in your history, in Blur history, and inside the documentary. So when was the right time for Wembley to talk about that with them and to film it?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me personally, I saw Blur in 1995 when I was 10 years old at Wembley Arena, which is like, it's still a huge space. It's 12,500 people, indoor arena. But next to it is the big elder, you know, sister brother, which is Wembley Stadium, which is 90,000 people. It's It's the biggest stadium in the UK, one of the biggest in the world. It is an international emblem for epic concerts like Queen and Live Aid and obviously loads of sporting competitions. So Wembley is like, it's more than just a stadium. It's symbolic of how far you can go in your music, creative or sporting career, you know. It's really iconic in that regard. So I heard a rumour before we started making the film and before the Wembley concerts by Blur were announced that they were going to do these concerts. And when I heard that rumour, I put myself forward to the band directly and the management, and I said, hey, just putting my hand up, I would absolutely love to be considered as the director if you wanted to make a film about it. And then I didn't hear anything back for 6 months. I thought the opportunity wasn't going to happen. And then I just had a breakfast with their manager, and she very kindly suggested that they had spoken to some directors and production companies, but the way I wanted to go about filming it was the way they wanted it to be done, and that was it. That's how it happened.
And last two questions, and then I let you go.
No problem.
The first one is that you worked with a band that got reunited after many years. In your history, you worked with actual groups that were together at the time of the documentary. So I'm curious about the differences, because after many years during a reunion, problems that you left in the past, maybe you have to, the band, you have to deal with them again.
Yeah.
And you are not in the band, so you're like a spectator and you try to organize. How does it work?
Again, I think you've got to know when to be present, asking questions and being involved. You also need to know when to get back, because they're there to do a job. They're rehearsing, they're, writing or recording a new album, they're playing the small warm-up concerts, they're then playing Wembley itself. So if I'm there documenting throughout that whole process, I have to be respectful that they're doing a job, imagine if someone just followed you all day with a camera. It's quite a weird thing, isn't it? Because you're just doing your job, but you've got someone that's sort of, oh, why did you pick up the piece of paper like that? That's interesting, and it's quite an odd thing to make a film in that regard. But my job also is to try and become invisible, where they sort of almost forget that you're there because they feel comfortable with you. So my job is to create that trust and elicit that sense of freedom for them. So even though there's a camera, hopefully after a while they're like, oh, it's okay, who cares? So that's the responsibility. And it's quite hard to do sometimes.
During the whole job, which were the 3 songs that you heard all the time, most of the time?
In the film, one of the songs, a very old Blur song called Pop Scene, is kind of almost like a theme of the film. You see them rehearsing it in the little rehearsal room, you see them doing it at the warm-up shows, then you see them doing it at Wembley. So the film sort of shows you the growth of the song and how the venue gets bigger, the band's confidence gets bigger until they're at Wembley and they're just playing to like 90,000 people and killing it, So that song's quite a key song in the film. Obviously, the big closing ballad, the Universal, which is one of their biggest and most beautiful songs, that has got a very emotional sort of moment in the film, I would say. And then I would say probably one of the new songs from their album, which you see in the film, you see them making the record, which is such an amazing insight. The song "The Narcissist." We were very lucky to have like cameras with the guitarist Graham Coxon as he was playing his guitar parts on that song, and the camera is very close to him. So I just feel like it was such a privilege for us to have that really close-up access whilst these magical moments are happening, but we get to then share them, with the audience in this film.
And last thing to is the end up. You worked with Blur just 1 year after they announced they were coming back. In 2022, you worked with Liam Gallagher,
yes.
And 2 years later, Oasis announced their comeback. So, in the name of the Italian people, I ask you, can you work with Alban and Romina so they can come back in turn?
I would love to. I love that. Yeah, it's funny that you put it that way. I didn't realise that there was an accidental pattern to it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever. I mean, who else could we put in that list? Radiohead would be good. They've been gone for almost 10 years now. There's quite a lot of bands that would be good to get back together, wouldn't it?
In Italy, we have many rock bands that we wait for their comeback, but Albano and Romina are the most iconic because they did some appearances in Sanremo.
Yeah.
And this year there was a fake news that they were organizing a new tour, but just 1 month ago, Albano said that it was all fake. So maybe
sad.
It's time for you.
It's time for me to get on the phone. I'll give them a call, and and also maybe Simon and Garfunkel as well. It's been a while since they've done anything, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, look, life is short. I think bands get back together as they get older because they're like, hang on a minute, I don't want my story and my legacy to finish on that note, or, and that's what's nice when bands do it. It's like, if they do it for the right reasons, it's a very beautiful thing for their relationship as well as for the fans, I think. So fingers crossed that they do it. I'll get in touch.